Here are 41 tiny details that you might have missed in Mario Kart World. Starting first with, why is it called Mario Kart World? Well, according to a developer interview that Nintendo put out on their website, it's confirmed here that if it had followed the same naming concept as the games prior, then it would have just been called Mario Kart 9. Which is good, because a lot of fans were really confused when we had things like Mario Kart Tour and Mario Kart Home Circuit. Would this be Mario Kart 9, Mario Kart 10, Mario Kart 11, I guess? But thankfully, we didn't have to worry about any of that, and we got Mario Kart World, a much more fitting name for the game. Despite how radically different this game is from the rest of the series, it is in fact still directed by the same person, Kasuke Yabuki, who's also directed every single Mario Kart game since Mario Kart Wii, even working on Nintendo's new games like ARMS. So while it might feel different, it's not coming from someone entirely different. If you pause at the entrance of Sky High Sundae, then you can see that there's now a rotating menu for Toadette's ice cream shop, including items such as sweet berry, sweet melon, and some other flavors that Toadette also sells at her ice cream shop alongside the sides of the track. One key example that you can see later is double cherry flavor and spiny gelato. I'll just stick to vanilla, thanks, I don't need spines in my ice cream. If you look closely during the original Mario Kart World trailer, then you can notice that a lot of the drivers for the vehicles that are acting as obstacles actually have Mario enemies inside. Take a look at this example where we can see Bowser driving by a Koopa Troopa that's driving a truck. And considering we can now get the new Kamek item to make even more Mario baddies as obstacles on the course, there's a lot more involvement from the greater Mario series in this new game. Look closely on the background in this Mario circuit in the beginning, since what might just look like rock formations are actually shaped to look like mushrooms. A cute detail for sure, it definitely looks a lot better than driving anywhere in the Southwest has ever looked. These obstacles here that we see the racers avoiding, these are called Bram Balls, and they're a reference to an enemy for the new Super Mario Bros. Games, which it's pretty cool to see those return, especially since after Mario Wonder, new Super Mario Bros. Just doesn't feel all that new. On the side of Shy Guy Bazaar that we can see here, look closely and you can peek out this advertisement that says Shy Guy Ceramics, which is a particularly fun nod to Super Mario Bros. 2, where these guys originated from, and the whole theme of pottery that we saw back in that game. Speaking candidly, the advertisement's some of my favorite parts of the Mario Kart games. I just think they're a really cute way to tuck in a bunch of references. Such as here, you can see the Rosalina bus tours that are driving around us, which is not only a reference to the fact that you see a lot of these bus tours driving around in urban areas, but it's also a cool homage to the idea of these star tours where you can drive around and see different celebrities on the map, often seen in cities like LA. And if you watch Rosalina's tour bus closely, you'll see that it actually stops at different bus stops on the map, and you can even see the characters getting on and off. The level of detail in this game is just insane. Like here, let's take a closer look at the bus itself. Since you can see from the different cars on the highway, the windows of the bus actually reflect the world around it, even though it's not actually on screen. And considering programming mirrors in games is a pretty complicated concept, it's cool to see how much they care about the little stuff. While rounding this turn on Mario Bros. Circuit, you can see a moving logo along the walls referencing the original Mario Bros. Arcade title. I mean, it wouldn't be a Mario Circuit without him plastering his face everywhere, right? If you watch closely when the blue shell explodes, then you can see that in Mario Kart World, they've added back in visible onomatopoeia from different things like explosions. Now, this was originally seen back in Mario Kart 64, but here we've got a few different examples of it showing up in game, such as later on when we see the super horn making the same sound of beep appear right in front of the player, which is a welcome change considering just how boring it was to use this in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The development for Mario Kart World traces all the way back to 2017, which interestingly enough is when the deluxe version for Mario Kart 8 came out, since at that point they felt like they perfected the formula of the gameplay loop, at least for the individual courses. And that's what inspired them to eventually take on this more ambitious concept of an interconnected world. And the reason it's coming out on the Switch 2 is that the idea that they had wasn't possible in the old hardware. And looking at the two side by side, you can see why. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the NPCs that watch the different races are actually just GIFs that are hanging out on the side. They're pre-rendered, but now in Mario Kart World, they're not only 3D models, but if you go into camera mode and follow around, you can actually see that they rotate with the camera, making for quite the creepy sight if you go and hang out in the crowds. Ugh. When Rosalina throws out a blue shell, she uses the same spinning animation that she does from Galaxy. Though we can no longer drive underwater like we could in the past Mario games, the rafts that we get when we go into boat mode are actually a reference to Flood, the Professor Egad designed water jetpack that we got back in Mario Sunshine. While you can find different Yoshis that are working shifts at the different food locations across the map, if you were to put on the delivery driver skin for our Yoshi character, you'll notice that he actually has crumbs on the side of his face. Maybe that's why he's on the track and not currently employed. A bunch of the different skins that we can see in Mario Kart World actually have specific animations just for them when tricking. And you can see this like the super pickaxe from Treasure Tracker on Toadette, Mario's sunglasses on his beach outfit, the way Yoshi poses as a gentleman, and of course, Waluigi's vampire bats. It's a little hard to do, but if you were to move your right stick to aim the camera, then you can actually throw your items in a specific way that isn't just forward and backward. And a little tip on how to make this easier, if you turn on auto accelerate again in the options, then that frees up your thumb from the A button and now you can use it to actually aim. After you've unlocked mirror mode, then when playing in free roam, you won't have the option to boot it up, but if you were to drive through the gigantic mural at Peach's Stadium, then much like the cutscene suggests, that'll bring your entire map into mirror mode, which is of course a reference to Mario 64 where we do the same with mirrors over there. Getting hit with a blue shell when you're in the front of the pack in Knockout Tour can be game ending. So if you want to save yourself a little bit of time, then you should know that by falling off the track, that'll actually give you enough invincibility frames to completely bypass the blue shell, or lightning in fact. Which even though it does take a little bit of time for Lakitu to put us back on track, it's still ultimately going to be less than it would have been if you got hit with it otherwise. If you're racing in an online lobby and you get knocked out early, then when you're playing in free roam mode and not spectating, you can actually see the ghosts of the other racers during the ongoing race. Just head to where they are on the map and there you go. Just be careful trying to keep up to them. I mean, you weren't able to in the regular race. I don't know why that's changing now. As we can see from this graph from VikeMK on Twitter, we can see just how much of a speed increase we get with each coin that we gain, with a max increase of 5% speed after we get 20 total coins. But worth noting is that they also mentioned in the replies that it depends on the cart and the character combo that you use. But if you needed any reason to go and get coins during the race, this definitely proves it across the board. If you played Mario Kart, you're probably familiar with this track. That's because Mario Circuit 3 tends to find itself in every Mario Kart game. And the reason for that is that development files suggest that when the first Mario Kart game, Super Mario Kart, was being developed, this was the first ever track designed. So if you're wondering why they love bringing it back so much, I think it's sentimental value. If you can't decide on a character, then wait around in the select screen, because if you wait long enough, eventually the characters will start humming along to the music. With Pauline becoming a mainstay Mario Kart character, she's also the only character among the cast that shares a voice actor with the Sonic the Hedgehog series, that specifically being Catherine David Higgins, who also does the voice over there for Wave the Swallow. If you try to use an item without actually having an item in your slot, then your character will do some kind of emote, which usually doesn't do much, but if you're next to the NPCs while driving, you'll notice that they actually wave back at you when you do this. When you drive past the Robo Donkey Kong and the DK Spaceport map, check this out in your rearview mirror, since when you do, you notice that its back piece has a reference to the Game Boy screen, with that iconic green glow and the controller buttons matching the same. There's a unique route on Shy Guy Bazaar that you might not have noticed unless you're approaching it the right way, but if you start from either Wario Stadium or Airship Fortress, then it's actually possible to drive through Daisy's Palace. But through regular races, you're really not gonna see it. The soundtrack in Mario Kart World is massive, with well over 200 tracks that we're able to hear, but weirdly enough, the only mainline Mario game that has no featured songs in the soundtrack is New Super Mario Bros. 2. But considering there's so many different coin items, I think that motif's well and kept up in this one. Right after you enter the tunnel of the airship on Airship Fortress, then if you look to the left and right hand sides, we can see a load of schematics for the bullet bills, which while they feature a lot of gibberish, they do detail each part of their anatomy. Gross. And then very shortly after this, we see how they're putting those schematics to good use, since there's the mechanical hands that bring in the bullet bills to a conveyor belt format, almost like the item box conveyor that we see in Toad's factory, which considering bullet bills are also an item in this game, I guess it's also an item factory too. If you were to fall beneath the Airship Fortress section in free roam, then you'll find that there's 3 bullies waiting for you, which could be a reference to having to fight the 3 little bullies that we found back in Super Mario 64 in Lethal Lava Land. I mean look, it's got lava and it's got lethality, I think that matches the bill. When you fall off of Bowser's Castle in free roam mode, then you can pay close attention and find yourself a fight between 4 Hammer Bros and 3 Charging Chucks, which I've seen weirder fights at sports bars. Right behind the starting line on Boo Cinema, you can see the opening times for the show Boo Castle, but it's not hard to miss because it's literally open every single moment of the day, which considering we're able to jump into the screen whenever we want, I guess that tracks. And right by the box office, we can also see a nice poster for the Yoshi's movie, which when you consider the after credits scene that we got at the end of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, seems like a subtle reference to what we're going to be getting in the sequel. And just past the entrance in the hallway, we can see this post for Wario's Shipyard, which would seem like an odd thing to advertise, so maybe it's implying that Wario's Shipyard is actually the set of a movie. I think that makes a lot more sense with Wario dressed up as a pirate, considering his history in Wario Masters of Disguise. And then we got yet another poster for Vampire, just to the right of the next opening in the same hallway, which funnily enough seems to be Waluigi playing the vampire just as you can get with his skin. When traveling to Faraway Oasis, you can see that there's a Shy Guy rowing club, which considering the fact that we're able to hop on different boats and catch a ride, it does actually seem like something that we could join instead of just colorful set dressing. When riding with the Rob Hog bike, you'll notice that it changes colors depending on the character that you're playing it with, and the colors that we see are actually references to the Nintendo Famicom in Japan and the NES NES system that was found elsewhere. If you wonder why you got this sticker for completing the special cup, then the reason for the GW80 sticker is actually a reference to the Game & Watch in the year 1980, because 1980 was when the first Game & Watch minigame, Ball, was released. And considering it was one of the first video games that Nintendo ever put out, you can see why it would be pretty special for them. And with that, folks, YouTube predicts that you might like this video. So see if they're right, and I'll see you soon.